knowing what the problem is, and knowing that there is a problem, knowing what the problem is like 90% of fixing the whole problem. Because a lot of people run around and they're trying to build wealth, or they're trying to get ahead, or whatever it is, and they feel like they're just spinning their wheels and they're not sure that they're attacking in the right spot.
Welcome to Money Therapy, where every dollar tells a story, and most importantly, so do you. I've explored thousands of podcasts discussing tools, tricks, and hacks to grow wealth. But when they failed me, I started asking why. The answer was clear. For a different output, I needed different inputs. So I shifted my focus from mere tools to more deeper sense of self. I started focusing on my identity, beliefs, values, goals, and vision. Once these were aligned, the same tools that were failing me before started to work. Join us at the intersection of life and money, where you are the ultimate asset in generating wealth for your life. Let's master our money, not be mastered by it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share for your weekly dose of money therapy, helping you turn wealth into a seamless part of your life's journey. Together, we're going to eliminate financial anxiety and hopelessness and gain confidence and clarity. Now, let's dive into today's episode of Money Therapy. All right, welcome to another episode of Money Therapy. I'm Brandon Chasteen. Along the ride with me
What's up, everybody? Bill McGill. Good to see everyone again. Brandon, great to see you, bud.
Good to see you. Yeah, you ready to kick off the show?
Do you think the listener knows we're lying through our teeth when we say stuff like that?
Which part? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's like good to see you. Missed you. Give me a hug. Some stuff like that.
Yeah, they probably have an idea. They have coworkers too.
I think they know.
So I was working on this show idea, and I was working on a couple other things simultaneously.
Yeah.
Back when I was in the Army, back in the day,
when you're a wee little lad,
there was this planning process that occurred. It was like the operation order, right? So there was this whole sequence of events. Everything is very, very like sequential and process driven in the military. And one of the parts of the planning process is basically understanding your enemy that you're fighting. And so there's a whole like part of the planning process that is carved out just for us to understand our enemy better. And there's actually depending on what level the planning is taking place. So at like a brigade level, a very high level, they will actually have like military officers sit down with military intelligence and start to learn and think. And their whole role for the unit is to just think like the enemy. Wow. And go into these planning processes and be like, well, Colonel, if you do this, if I'm the bad guy, I'm going to do this. I'm going to react with these. These are the weapons I have available. Or, hey, this is a super rainy area, so we can't move a lot. So we're going to use this path instead of that path, or we're going to take the high ground instead of the low ground. So their whole role is they get paid to just think like the bad guys. Yeah. And it's really kind of cool. So anyway, I was dwelling on that for probably too long, and came up with this show, Know Thy Enemy. Yeah. Right? You're creating wealth. You're trying to create wealth, or you have wealth and you want to protect it. Yeah. And whatever the situation is there are enemies out there right now that are trying to annihilate your wealth or the path to wealth. Yes. They're just trying to crush you and keep you from it. Yeah. And I just want to say too, like becoming wealthy is not for everyone. Like you can't be lazy. Yeah. Becoming wealthy is not for the lazy. It's not for the people that are just consumed with fear to the point where they can't take action.
Or unintentional. You got to be intentional.
Yeah. So becoming wealthy is not for everyone. Yeah. Right. And if you have accidentally wound up wealthy, keeping wealth is not for everyone.
Yeah. And just ask the lottery winners.
Yeah. So I think by understanding who our enemy is, if you are a person that is striving to grow your wealth or protect the wealth that you have. You aren't a lazy person. You are intentional. You do take action.
Yeah.
You're educating yourself. You're building a network of people you can trust. If that fits the bill for you, then let's go ahead and just define the enemy that's trying to annihilate the path you're on or the wealth you have.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point that people really don't think about is exactly what you were talking about with the military. Like, how can I, once I build something, taking a step back and being able to look at a situation or look at your situation and kind of poke holes in the plan and look for holes in the ship, so to speak. I actually, I use that metaphor all the time with clients. It's like, hey, my job is to look at your whole financial picture, no matter where you're at, and try and poke holes in our ship and figure out where the weak points are.
Yeah, you
And
want to play like the enemy.
yeah, and it kind of goes along with that old saying, like, knowing what the problem is and knowing that there is a problem, knowing what the problem is like 90% of fixing the whole problem. Because a lot of people run around and they're trying to build wealth or they're trying to get ahead or whatever it is, and they feel like they're just spinning their wheels and they're not sure that they're attacking in the right spot. So I'm excited for this episode because we're going to highlight a couple of things, and I'm going to lead you right into the first one, if that's okay with you, Brandon. But we're going to highlight a couple of things to look out for, different ways to look at it, to try and plug up those holes in that ship. So, the first biggest one that comes to mind, and it's, a catchphrase, something that's being used in the news today, and, we're getting beat to death with it, is inflation. So what do you think about inflation, Brandon? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Where do you see it? Where do you see inflation really as quite possibly the number one killer of wealth? Where do you see that playing the biggest role in with your clients and in your own personal life?
Yeah, I think so. We did a show a couple weeks ago. You can go back and listen to it, called "The Silent Wealth Killer." And if we're painting these, if we're personifying these risks, these things out there as enemies, this is the, like, ninja, the ghillie suit wearing sniper.
This is the Bruce Lee
that sneaks up on you, and you didn't even realize how devastating it is or has been or was. It's on the backside of it, and you just realize, man, I am not as good off as I once was.
Yeah.
So I put inflation number one because we're experiencing it right now. Two, because it is the silent killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we don't think, see, or feel necessarily day in, day out. In the silent wealth killer, we talked about, like, that person that's losing weight. You haven't seen them in a year, and you go and they've lost like 50 pounds. You're like, holy crap, you look like a whole new person.
Yeah.
But they're just like, really? I haven't realized, or I haven't noticed it as much.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing themselves every day versus, taking a step back.
And sticking with this metaphor, it can totally drive you crazy too. I've recently lost a little bit of weight, and, like, you cannot tell, like, looking in the mirror, but it's like I've lost like 15 to 17 pounds or something intentionally. And, like, I don't see any difference. Like,
well, you still have a face for radio, so
I do.
you're doing
That
good.
part I don't think is ever going to change. I'm in that category of maybe shouldn't even be let out of the house, right? But I'm fortunate that I can get out to the world somehow, some way.
So I just want to read some statistics here, and so keep up, but just sit and listen. So, since January of 2021.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking 3 years. Eggs have gone up 49.3%, almost 50% in cost.
So if they were $1, now they're $1.50.
Yeah. Gas is up 47.8%. Airline tickets up 32.5%. Electricity up 30%. Natural gas up 27%.
Yeah.
Chicken from the store up 24%. Public transportation, if you don't own your car, if you live in a city, that's up 22%.
Yeah.
If you try to buy a used car because you don't want to lose value when you buy a new car, guess what? Used cars are up 21%.
Yeah.
Milk has gone up 15%, clothes up 13.5%.
Yeah.
All right. Wild inflation. How about this? You think to yourself, I just let me hold on just a second. I just lost that one. You think to yourself, I'm going to cut some costs. So instead of the nice meals out, I'm going to go get some fast food. We'll do it instead of going to, the family going to dinner at a nice restaurant. We'll just grab some McDonald's. Prices at McDonald's have doubled since 2014. While the inflation data shows 31% inflation, prices at Popeyes, Taco Bell, Chipotle have risen by 86, 81, and 75% respectively. So what was cheap is not cheap anymore.
Dude, you can't get out of Taco Bell with 3 tacos for 89 cents anymore.
No, you can't.
Like last time I was at Taco Bell, it cost me $20.
So prices, I
didn't even know you could spend $20 at Taco Bell.
Prices are soaring. Me and Mackenzie and Ellie went not too long ago to Taco Bell and subsequently went to a Mexican restaurant, I think later that week or the next week. And it was cheaper for us to sit down at a Mexican restaurant than it was to eat Taco Bell in the drive-thru.
That's nuts, dude.
It is. So we're all on the same page. It's very real. Prices are skyrocketing, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Like these are real numbers. And here's the last piece to sum this up. Over the last 5 years, the purchase power of the US dollar has declined by 23%. Over the last 3 years, the dollar has declined, the purchase power has declined by 16%. So what that is effectively saying is that what $1 used to buy 5 years ago, is now only able to purchase about 75 cents worth of goods today.
Yeah.
Right. So you have effectively, if you have a nice nest egg, and let's say you just held cash for the past 5 years, you've effectively wiped out 25%, a quarter of your, if you made it to retirement and you had like $2 million in a bank account and you're like, I can just live off this $2 million for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right. That $2 million, assuming there wasn't any growth on it, is now equivalent to about 1.5. You've lost $500,000 plus you're having to spend 100% more on McDonald's.
Yeah.
80% more, 15% more on milk.
Yeah.
Right. So you've had to spend more. So what you thought you were only going to need to withdraw $100,000 a year, but now you have to withdraw about 120 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And that $2 million has effectively, you've wiped out about $500,000 on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. The one thing I do want to point out too is, and I think that this is a advantage of being, above 30 years old, to be honest with you. All of this, the main point is like all of this has really happened in the last 5 years. Like the explosion of inflation has really happened in the last 5 years. If we've heard, again, the benefit of history from 2008 until about 5 years ago, inflation was never talked about. People seem to have forgotten about it because they were, the Fed was measuring it as 0%, 0%. Here's my point. My point is you always have to be, this is why it's, I think, the silent wealth killer, or why we do, because you always have to be planning for it, right? The people who plan for the inflation with their investments, retirement savings, things like that, they're not feeling the hurt nearly as that person who has everything in cash or all of their, money in their house, or, whatever the situation may be. That's what, so when there is going to come a day, to give a little hope, there will be a day where inflation comes down, probably. And we're seeing a little bit of that right now with the Fed, or so the Fed says. But the point is, this is your chance to start planning for it for the future, because there is going to come a day where inflation is lower than we think it is. And then there'll be another day where inflation rises again. And we'll be having this conversation probably in the next 10 to 15, 20 years.
I just want to, like, just to be really clear, let's make sure people understand, like, you have to differentiate lower inflation as opposed to disinflation.
Right.
Lower inflation. The goal right now, our entire country's like financial arsenal is really, really focused on bringing inflation down. That is not the same thing as getting to a point of disinflation. They are not trying to stop prices from rising. They're trying to get them to rise slower. So if all was perfect in the world right now, inflation would still be about 2%, which is what we're used to.
Right.
But there is not a goal right now for us to get to a point where things get cheaper. So just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
So how do you beat, so with every one of these enemies that we're about to talk about, inflation being the first one we're talking about, how we want to know how to, if they're trying to kill us or trying to annihilate us, how do we annihilate them?
Yeah, it's a great question.
That's what I want to talk about. Like, let's go jump into that, Bill. How do we annihilate inflation? How do we beat it before it beats us?
Yeah, the best way that I can articulate this, and what I try and do with my clients in educating about this, is try and make it as simple as possible. And it's not going to be a complicated answer, but it's very simply identifying what an asset is and what a liability is. And understanding that an asset is something that grows in value, something that adds to your income or adds to your net worth going up over time. A liability is something that takes away from your net worth or takes away from your income over time. And so you can put, for instance, inflation into that liability category. It's also, people use liability and risk a lot of times interchangeably, but what my goal for me and my clients, and for me personally, and what I think the name of the game is how do I get my assets to outgrow my liabilities? And how can I do that so that they're growing at a substantial rate, right? So that's a significant rate above the other, so that it's sustainable. What do you think?
I'm going to simplify it and say, if you want to beat inflation, you plan for it. So plan around it, plan through it, know that it's going to be there, right? Don't round down, round up when we're talking about like financial planning and inflation.
Yeah.
If you're planning for it, you should understand that your cash flow, the net cash flow, you're spending money, has to increase year over year. So even if we're using the long-term average of like 2 to 2.5, maybe 3%, if I'm pulling out $100K out of my retirement plan this year, next year it's $103K, right?
Yeah.
Like we plan for it. And then the other thing, so plan, and plan some more. And then the other thing is to own assets, kind of what you're alluding to, but just simply, like, if you want to beat inflation, don't hold cash, own assets.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And those can be a million different things for a million different people.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, in the light of don't own cash, own assets, one of the things that we preach on and on about is having a good emergency fund, and usually for us, that's about 3 to 6 months of expenses. So know that there are things that you can do with that emergency fund to mitigate the risk of inflation. That should probably be in cash. Most financial advisors, I think, would tell you that should be in cash. So the name of the game there, I would just, as a caveat, say, is to, cut the risk of inflation down as much as possible with that money, but you're never going to get rid of it. Inflation will.
Well, I mean, I would disagree. I mean, there's like currently, and you haven't kept pace the whole time, but if you would have held some of these high yield CDs, high yield money market accounts, again, being appropriate is between you and a planner. This is not advice. It's educational.
Right.
But what we want to focus on is, like, making sure, like what you're saying as far as emergency savings goes, obviously, that isn't an inflation fighter. That's a life emergency fighter, right?
Yeah, it's more like insurance, if you will.
So, yeah. So yeah, I think that, definitely never want to put any or all your eggs in one basket for anything that we talk about.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
So kind of your enemy number 2, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is inefficient cash flows, cash flow inefficiency. And listed that number 2 because this one is killing so many people, but it is the biggest buffoon on the battlefield. It is so easy to like not let this enemy kill you or derail you.
Yeah.
It is so easy to not let inefficient cash flows affect you.
Yeah.
But it is affecting almost everyone I meet.
Yeah.
And so we just want to like, all right, so let's define, first of all, what am I talking about? What's cash
That's what
flow?
I was going to ask. I'm like,
Yeah,
for the
so-
listener, Brandon, please
so
elaborate.
You make money somehow, some way. Money comes to you. When money comes to you, it goes and it gets spent on things that you spend money on. It can pay debt. It can pay your taxes, and it can be saved. That's about the only things that you can do. You can also give to charity, right? You can give money away. A lot of times we put that under the spending bucket.
Yeah.
But there's some tax strategies with giving. So we'll give that. So basically 5 things, right? If I make $100,000, I can spend some of it. I can save some of it. Some of it's going to go to taxes, whether I like it or not. Some of it's going to pay some debt obligations that I have for a mortgage or car payment or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I can give some to charity.
Sure.
So if these things are not in line, if they're out of whack, right? Then it's quite simple. If I'm not paying attention to it, money goes to places where it shouldn't end up going to. And those inefficiencies, I mean, it's quite as simple as me realizing, oh, hey, there's a little bit money going here and I could put it here and I could reduce my taxes.
Yeah.
If I just made this one decision, if I would have realized this decision 3 years ago, I could have saved, $30,000 in taxes over the past 3 years. I'm making those numbers up completely. But the point is when we aren't aware, when we're oblivious, we're making mistakes, we're making assumptions.
Yeah.
It's costing us.
Yeah. You remind me of a client I had a number of years ago. He had 2 car payments, a slingshot payment, I think like an RV payment, and then his house payment. Right? He had all these things going on, but he had a goal of being out of all that debt, like including his house, in 8 years was his goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that, that's a great goal. Let's talk about that. How much are you putting? What does that look like? And he's like, well, it's really great. I'm putting extra on every single payment, extra on every one. I said, oh, that's really interesting. So I got all the numbers and I reworked the numbers, and I didn't add any money that he was paying towards the debt. I just rearranged where his money was going month by month. Yeah. And I got back to him. I said, how does 4.5 years sound? He's like, how did you do that? I said, I didn't change anything that you're already doing. I just directed where it was supposed to go. Right. So even, that could be for a taxes standpoint, that could be from a debt or liability standpoint. You're absolutely right. Like, you can think, how many times have we met somebody who thinks they're, making a lot of progress, and you and I talk to them once and go, yeah, you're running the wrong direction. We got to get you going that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's countless. And I think the big takeaway here is just, again, this is the simplest, this is the most basic enemy that's coming at you to ruin your journey path to wealth. Or if you have wealth, it can absolutely destroy your wealth.
Yeah.
But it's a buffoon. And it's literally something you can just get in front of with simple awareness, planning, strategy, and thinking through, like I said, like you said, sitting down with, like, somebody sat down with you and all of a sudden their 8-year plan turned into a 4.5-year plan because of efficiency.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how do we do this? How do we beat this enemy? First, complete a spending analysis. I am about 100%. I shouldn't say that. I'm like 99. I've met one person out of hundreds who has said, Brandon, I spend this much money a month. And when we did kind of an audit on his spending, he was within $100. Like, it was impressive.
That's amazing.
Every other single person I've ever met is off by thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Like it's so bad.
Yeah.
Complete a spending audit.
All the time.
Reach out to us and we can give you some real easy tips, tricks, and like hacks on how to understand how much money you are actually spending. It's very simple. You just got to reach out and we'll send you the information you need.
Yeah.
The other thing, and
Sure.
we were talking about this in pre-show, I want you to share your thoughts, but automate savings, right? So if we can automate our savings, we don't have to remember to save every month. It's automatic.
Yeah.
What do you have? Because you kind of countered that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Automate savings can be a great tool, but I think it can also, I've seen it hinder people as well. I think kind of, it can kind of lull you to sleep in some ways. Again, if you're not, if it's too automated and you're not keeping track of it or keeping attention, just like anything else, it can kind of go by the wayside. So, I've had plenty of clients in the past, or people that I've talked to in public and said, hey, what's your plan for retirement? And they go, oh, well, I invest in my company's 401k. I'm good for retirement. So, well, how much do you invest in your 401k? Like, do you know how much you should be investing? Like, I just, I go up to the match. I think it's 3% and they match 3% and I'm good. Retirement's taken care of. And I go, I can almost guarantee you are under saving for retirement.
Well,
and
I
not
can
just
almost
guarantee that, but it's automated, so they forget about it, so.
I think, again, the other thing too is because we haven't paid attention, right? The whole thing about this is all you got to do is pay attention and make a plan.
Yeah.
Right. And you will destroy cash flow inefficiency enemy.
Yeah.
Right. So because he's ignored it for so long, right, not only is he probably not saving the right amount, but because he could just increase it a little bit, potentially, he could also decrease his taxes, which would create a better net cash flow for him. Right.
Yeah. And I run into this all the time with clients too. It's like we have an entire like coaching arm of Harpeth Wealth, if you will. And we charge, like an hourly rate to coach people to the point where they get to the wealth management side of things. And I always tell people, like, listen, this is, my rate, per month or whatever. But in our first couple of months, I'm probably going to triple that in terms of what you're saving every month, just by like pointing it out to you. And they all laugh and say, I don't see how that's possible. I'm pretty good with saving, blah, blah, blah. But as you know, like, as you just said, like, people are terrible with knowing what they actually spend. And so it's that self-awareness and having that aha moment is like, it's unbelievably valuable, especially down the road.
Yeah. So a couple other actionable steps that you can take we talked about spending analysis, completing one of those. We talked about automatic savings, plan for effective tax strategy. So that's sitting down with a tax professional or financial professional that understands tax strategy.
Yeah.
And actually personalizing tax strategy, just like we personalize investment strategy, tax strategy is important.
Yeah.
Some like the average, not the wealthiest, the average American, not the wealthiest.
Yeah.
Again, I say the average American will spend about 38% of the money they make in their lifetime on taxes.
Yeah.
Right. That's a well-researched study. You can Google it. And the study should pop up, but the average American 38. So if you make $10 million in your lifetime, 3.8 million is going to the IRS.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
So how do we beat that? How do we become below that? How do we come in under that? Is we have tax strategy. Nobody breaks rules. We follow the law, but we create efficiency.
Yeah. The one thing I would jump in with that too is, if you want to get really fancy within, start off where you can with the tax strategy, but I like to think about it as kind of a short-term and long-term tax strategy. So like this year, can I save some money on my taxes, and what's the list of things that I could do to do that? But then also, like, there's things like the Roth IRA out there where maybe this year it doesn't make much sense to save money on taxes for one reason or the other. And now it's a good year to put into your Roth IRA. The Roth IRA goes tax-free, once you put the money in there. So if you want to lower that tax bill later on down the road, the Roth IRA can be a great way to do that as well. Now, there's other ways that you can do that with pre-tax as well, but I'm just saying, like, in the big picture, the Roth can be a huge tool, as well as what you're doing today to lower your tax liabilities, the fancy word. that we would.
Yeah, and I'll come back to. I got something else to add, but I'll come back to that because we're going to talk about number 3 in a second.
Yeah.
But the other 2 things: implement cash flow management tools. There's tools available. Use them, and then also if you got to regularly review your cash flows.
Yeah.
This should be done probably quarterly. If I'm
Yeah.
being really honest, a quarterly review of this. Once you get it set up, you might have to be on this for several months in a row, like monthly and weekly. And once you kind of get it set and established, then you can back off to reviewing and making sure there's no drift. But sometimes many people, many companies, they will like just revisit this once a year and they've drifted so far and they've lost so much time and money. Check this stuff quarterly. If you're working with somebody, work with somebody that keeps you honest on a quarterly basis. Yeah. All right. Not silent. Enemy number 3. Know thy enemy. Enemy number 3, overpaying taxes, the dang IRS. Yes. Right? They will come and they will gladly take as much as you want to give them, as long as you're giving them at least what you owe, but they will let you overpay.
Oh yeah.
They will. They're super happy to take that money. Again,
they love it.
Tax strategy. How do we annihilate this enemy before it annihilates us? Have strategy, have a plan. Rely on somebody, create a network of professionals or a professional person that understands how to build strategy and implement it.
Yeah. I mean, my personal example of this year for me was I did how I would do my own taxes with my wife and I. And, obviously it's a little different with me being a 1099 and my wife being a W-2. So it makes it a little more complicated. Right. And I'm not a tax professional. So I did it myself and the taxes came out to I wanted to cry what the taxes were. And I worked with a CPA for the first time. It's like, I got to get professional. They cut it in half.
Yeah.
They cut it in half. And I was like about to write a check, assuming, well, I've done everything I can. I guess this is just how it's going to be. And then the CPA was like, no, how does 50% of that number sound? I'm like, it sounds, now I'm dancing, right? Instead of crying. So you don't know what you don't know. Go get a professional to help you with that.
And it's not like, so a lot of times a couple things that I run into in working with people and focusing on tax strategy, a lot of times people make assumptions, and that's what destroys them. Is they'll assume things like, well, I'm maxing out my IRA, so that's all I can do. Just the assumptions alone are what devastates people. If you don't know it, you're probably going to be you are making assumptions, and you're probably making the wrong ones. I've come into working with people who were giving to charity, and just by restructuring some of the charitable gifts that we were doing, like for one particular client, I completely eliminated his tax bill on an annual basis.
Wow.
Like took him from, he was overpaying taxes because he was fully retired and doing some giving. We just restructured a couple things for him and he went from paying taxes to paying no taxes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
There's strategies out there that are completely legal for people that are earning significant incomes where we can effectively mitigate like hundreds of thousands of dollars of income.
Yeah.
All through simple shifts of what you're probably already doing. So talk to someone, don't make assumptions, work with a tax advisor, work with a tax strategist, work with a financial planner that understands taxes and make those things. And again, simply on the more simple level, if you're not, leverage your 401k or an IRA, leverage the tools that you have and saving strategies, understand those and how you can reduce your taxes there.
Yeah. Dude, let's talk about insurance. Let's talk about inadequate insurance. Yeah. I think this is the biggest thing that kind of hit me in the face when I was reading through the notes is how often do I have this conversation with clients? The being able to retire seems like such a giant goal for people, and it is. And there's this tendency, and let me know if you feel this too. There's a tendency I feel that when people finally get on top of that mountain and they go, okay, I'm good for retirement, insurance is one of those things they just never see coming, and how that could literally pull the rug out from under them. Do you have sort of the same feeling, or am I talking crazy here?
No. So insurance is again, inadequate insurance is the enemy. And I've seen this and I've heard story after story after story about like a ton of regret surrounding inaccurate, inappropriate amounts of insurance, not enough insurance.
Yeah. Or no
Guys,
insurance.
here's the crazy thing. There are so many people out there right now that are on the mindset, well, I need to be worth 2.5 to $5 million so I can retire. Right? If I retire with $5 million, I'll have money left over at the end of my life to give to like create legacy.
Yeah.
It's as simple as signing a document and having a quick med exam, and you could have that $5 million nest egg within days.
Yeah.
Right? Like insurance can be wildly cheap. There are more expensive insurances out there.
Sure.
Insurance is also a great way to avoid unnecessary taxes.
It
So it's
can't be a
not,
way to kill wealth too. So you got to be careful. I mean,
it's,
insurance is, it's get a professional with insurance, like somebody who actually understands insurance, not just
yeah. I
an
mean,
insurance salesman, right?
For everything out there, there's always like bad apples, and there are absolutely salespeople just trying to push product. But for the most people that when you go talk to someone, they do have some invested interest in you. And so just understand, like, getting appropriate. I will say this, life insurance is wildly, wildly important, right? I have life insurance. It'll take care of my daughter if something happens to me. It'll take care of Mackenzie if something happens to me. Pay for any liabilities that I have, replace income that would be lost because I'm no longer here.
Yeah.
It'll create that legacy that I want to create for my daughter. It'll pay for her education, that kind of stuff. But here's the real thing. What a lot of people don't understand, like anybody listening to this, Bill, I'm talking to you right now.
Oh yeah.
You are a wealth generating machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can produce wealth anytime you want, right?
Yeah.
You can make a call. You can get a new client. You can come up with a new idea. You can invent something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can put a product on the market. You can write a book. You can start a podcast. You can do anything that you want to create money. You are a wealth creating machine.
It's true.
And what will derail your opportunity to create wealth quicker than anything is if you lose the ability to create wealth, i.e. disability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you lose brain function, cognitive function, if you lose your ability, physical function for some people.
Yeah.
So understanding, like, life insurance is important. Having the right property insurance to be covered, your cars and things like that, that's important legally.
Mm-hmm.
But disability insurance is wildly important because you are going to become a liability to someone else if they have to take care of you and you have zero income for the rest of your life.
It's true.
So inadequate insurance is a lurking enemy out there.
Mm-hmm.
People are afraid to make decisions. It does cost money. People don't like to sit there and think about all the bad what ifs that could happen in life. And, I don't want to think about dying. I don't want to think about disability. I don't want to it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen today.
Yeah.
They fail to make decisions. And I can't tell you again how many people have sat in chairs in my office, just destroyed, their livelihood destroyed because the loved ones in their life failed to make the right decisions about insurances in a timely manner.
Yeah, I would say highlight, disability is something that no one talks about, and it's a huge need out there. So,
and a lot of these things too. Like if you're working for a company, a lot of these can be employee benefits, and it can become wildly inexpensive to have disability insurance. As long as if you hit through an employer, it gets a little bit more expensive if you're self-employed, but wildly worth it. Mm-hmm. All right. So action steps here: review your insurance. I've talked about this before. I was in the Army. There were constantly times I was put out in areas with not enough men, not enough guns, not enough stuff. We had to make do. So we would set up defensive perimeters. And guess what? Like, there were certain points where I'd be like, hey, this is our weakest in our perimeter. This is our weakest point. Right. But through analysis, I understood where my deficiencies were. I understood where my vulnerabilities were. Right. Mm-hmm. And I planned through them and planned around them. So again, we're not going to be able to insure 1,000% of everything in our life. It
No.
would be too expensive. So,
Yeah.
but doing a thorough analysis, checking insurance policies, making sure things, getting a will, getting all these things put up and set up in a place where your loved ones know how to track them down.
Yeah.
It can
It's
help.
huge.
So, consult with a professional. Sit down with an insurance advisor, not just a
Mhm.
salesman. All right. Um. All right, Bill.
Yeah.
Fear.
Fear
Fear is an enemy.
could also be, I mean, to me, that could be the number one enemy too. I mean,
It's not the number one.
well, I don't know. I mean, it's a debate that we can have another day, I guess. But it's, fear can stop people in the tracks. And, we were talking earlier about, um, you know, people making decisions, but maybe not the most efficient or right decisions. And usually fear has something to do with that.
I think the the thing is why I don't think fear is the biggest one is because, again, what I said at the beginning of the show, wealth is not for everyone, right? Sometimes I think we use fear as an excuse,
Yeah.
and those people are probably just like lazy and not driven, not motivated. They're using it as an excuse. I
Yeah.
think there's some people that are driven, that are ready, like to create wealth. They're on a
Hmm.
path. They're committed. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
And fear is a legitimate part of this, but those people will conquer it. It's just, generally speaking, like the first reaction is something we have to learn. Like the first time I saw an enemy on the battlefield, my reaction was like I was afraid, right?
Hmm.
The second, the third time, and every time after that, like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't stupid. Like there was still real threat, but I knew what I was capable at that point, right?
Hmm.
So it's just about having, again, so much of this is about the network of people we put in our lives and understanding, like, the best way to combat fear is to educate ourselves and surround ourselves by smart people that can push us and be there with us and that we can
Yeah.
talk to.
And people that have been there before. I mean, so I coach diving, and some of these kids, are scared to do something for the first time that I know that they're fully capable of doing. And I've done whatever dive I'm telling them to do for the most part. And so, you got to have that person saying, "Hey, come on, you can do it." Yeah, I know that you're afraid, but one of the coaching techniques that I use, and I also kind of use this with clients with finances, is what if I told you, and I'll say this to the kids, like, what if I told you this will be like the most fun dive that you ever do?
Yeah.
Like, it's so much fun. Like, beyond the fear is a lot of fun. And that, a lot of times you can see it in kids. They kind of get up and they're like, okay, this is going to be fun. Like, I know I'm afraid, but Bill says it's going to be okay. I just got to do that. And then they do it. And the smile on their face is like, they're jacked. They're so excited because they did something. They stepped out of their comfort zone. And I feel like that's our role as financial advisors a lot of times too, is like, hey, I know that you're afraid of, the stock market or the bond market or the real estate market, or whatever the conversation is, but we know what we're doing. We've been here before, and now it's time to teach you how to do it. Come on, it's okay. It's going to be all right. We've thought about all that stuff. All your your fear is warranted, but once you get out and once you step outside your comfort zone, you grow. And so, I don't know. I think the big takeaway here, my little caveat rant here is, don't let fear hold you back from education and growing outside, and using those professionals around you to help yourself grow, because that's going to help you get to wealth and success in life a lot faster.
Yeah. I think, fear is a part of life. The way that fear wins is when it can go from an emotion that we're experiencing to like a physical manifestation of like limiting us, creating
Mhm.
stagnation, making us not like choose not to decide, indecisiveness.
Yeah.
When we're physically missing the opportunity because we're what we're feeling, that's where fear has won. That's when the enemy of fear has won.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned like education is what we can educate ourselves, and that helps destroy fear on the battlefield.
Yeah.
We understand like calculated risk. right? So that's where the network of people come in and start helping us like do some analysis, and then
Yeah.
just realizing the trust like inside the group is once trust is built, like risk becomes far less because we have more eyes looking out for it. All
Yeah,
right.
real quick story before we wrap up. I was just thinking about this literally like yesterday, in that I was, discussing with my wife. I was like, yeah, I have this prospective client that, they've never invested in the stock market before, and basically I know that they should do A, B, and C, but they're basically scared to do all those things. And so we just opened up like a money market account to get a little interest on our money. And my wife actually said, well, isn't inflation eating away at that money? I was like, yeah. And so she said, so they're not really making a whole lot of progress with that. I said, well, no, but this is the biggest step they've ever taken. And so if they can trust me on this step, maybe someday I can get them into the stock market and then make that bigger change down the road. But it's all about, going back to the other story, getting out of your comfort zone, getting people you trust who are competent and have your best interest at heart to help you grow in all those different areas, and not let fear hold you back.
Yeah, love it. All right, last one. Not investing in oneself.
Oh, we're
Right.
getting existential now. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is for every person on this journey, or every person that has journeyed into wealth,
Yeah.
investing in yourself is important.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget how important it is, and we make decisions and we feel like generally speaking, when we have to sacrifice something, taking care of ourselves is the thing that gets sacrificed.
Yeah.
Whether you're a parent, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a friend, most people that like are on this journey, that are driven, there's empathy involved. And when you have empathy, it's easy to show up for everyone else
Yeah.
and put everything that you need on the back burner.
Yeah.
This lurking enemy on the battlefield will destroy you
Yeah.
if you don't address it.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind, the one thing that's a thought, I heard this from somebody one time, and it really changed my life, in that, we talk about all the time about compounding interest with money, but there is a compounding effect with knowledge and growth. And so if you're young and you learn a skill, or you learn something that helps you go in a positive direction with finances or anything else, you have an entire lifetime to compound that and that experience and that wisdom. And so if you're ever struggling with getting motivated, I would say start where you can start, and start where you're interested, and just think of it as adding tools to your tool belt. That these tools never go away. Once I learn something, I carry it with me for forever, and I can use it 10, 15 years down the road. I can get better at, what it is that I do, or the skill that I want to develop. Everything compounds. And so that can be very exciting once you realize what direction you want to go in and what kind of tools you want to put in your tool belt. Goes along with the growing and the, getting outside your comfort zone as well.
Yeah. And the best part, so again, investing in yourself, obviously we're going to want to grow our skills, our abilities, our how smart, educated we are in our endeavors and what we do. We want to become a professional and expert, but we also just want to like go to the gym, right? Invest in our health. We want to eat good food, get plenty of sleep. Spend some time, like even just before this podcast recording, I was sitting there just doing some like quiet meditation, just writing my gratitude journal, and just spending some time like just pouring into myself a little bit. And
I
here's
thought you
the
were
cool
going to
part.
say you were doing crunches like in the corner.
Not
I
crunches.
thought that's where you're going with that.
No, wasn't doing that. But here's what's really cool. You want to know, investing in yourself, you want to know what it is. You know what, like the compounding interest, the compounding returns.
Yeah.
You want to know how that's achieved in investing in yourself.
Yeah.
Is giving some time investing into people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People don't like to be outgiven. So if I spend some time just pouring into you, Bill, it's going to come back. I'm creating relationships, creating networks where if I pour into you and I try to take care of you too, on top of taking care of myself, I just went from me taking care of me and you to now creating this thing where it's me taking care of you and you taking care of me. And then if I take care of another person and they take care of me, and then they take care of you and you take care, you start to like to create this web of
or if
people constantly pouring into you. You have the ability to constantly pour into people. And so even when you're down in the dumps one day, people are going to be calling you saying, "Hey, Brandon, how they're checking on you." Right.
Yeah.
So,
or you teach me something new that helps my life, and then I teach somebody else new. And, you know, that originated from Brandon. Right.
Yeah.
So that web even compounds more so.
It keeps going. So networks are important all through this. Planning is important all through this. For every enemy, a plan and a network of people you can trust and rely on. That's like 90% of it, right? And then throughout the rest of it is just some simple things, some simple decisions.
And if you get a level of success, you know, Denzel Washington said this one time: if ever you get a step up and you get to another level of success, look back and lend a hand and help somebody up. You know, so don't miss that part, because that's the best part too. That leads to wealth in a lot of different ways, not just money.
I like it. I think, you know, just to wrap it up, for those people that are capable and have it in you to create wealth, and you're on that journey, or if you've created wealth and you want to protect it and preserve it and create legacy, for those people, there's enemies out there that are trying to take you down, take it out, take it away from you, take your ability away from you. Once we understand who our enemies are, honestly, there's really nothing in here that's hard to beat. You know, if this was an army briefing, I would just say our enemy is capable, but they're definitely an enemy that we can defeat with little to no injury or wounds to our endeavors. You know, they're not going to keep us from being successful. So anyway, any closing thoughts, Bill?
I think we're good, guys. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Like, comment, subscribe. If you got questions for me or Brandon, as always, go to harpethwealthpartners.com. You'll find both of our emails there. And we'll see y'all next week.
Later, guys.
We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only, and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you, and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandon at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.